Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would do this little video that I found to be very particularly interesting. And I do apologize, of course, for not doing some more videos, but certain things, of course, they ended up coming up. But, anyways, this video is going to be a video that I'm going to review by that of Mr. Boxing Ego. And the reason why I thought that I would talk about this is because, of course, especially ever since the Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia fight happened earlier this year, and of course overall that's of the Gervonta Tank Davis and Frank Martin fight. And of course, also since Tank Davis fought that of Ryan Garcia last year, there's been a lot of conversation about Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Tank Davis, because of course those are looked at as three of the four main kings or undefeated kings of the 135-pound weight class, of course, at one point in time. And of course, it's been a very interesting fight triangle because Gervonta Tank Davis, in my view, he was able to beat Ryan Garcia with, I'm not going to say, very easily, but I think that he was able to beat him, still quite clearly and relatively dominantly, at least to the point where Ryan Garcia clearly wasn't able to win really a lot of the rounds within that fight, maybe two, I thought. But anyways, of course, ever since the Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney fight, a lot of people have been commenting about Devin Haney, wondering about how good he actually was. And of course, a lot of people now are also stating that Devin Haney is very chinny, basically stating that he does not have that good of a beard, that he doesn't have that ability to really take a punch very well. And I thought that I would actually talk about this not only because Boxing Ego has really been going in on Devin Haney, which is very particularly interesting. There's a reason why he's doing it, because he is a major Gervonta Tank Davis fan. But I've actually never agreed with the narrative or the point that Devin Haney is quote-unquote chinny. Devin Haney has only ever been knocked down by one fighter, and that has been that of Ryan Garcia. Now, if we want to talk about other faults that Devin Haney has, do I believe that he is as good of a defensive fighter as many people try to claim him to be? Do I believe that he's the Floyd Mayweather of the 135 or 140-pound weight class, as many people have tried to allege that he is? No. I think that he's a mimic of Floyd Mayweather, and I think a lot like Adrian Broner or some of these other black fighters that look quote unquote slick at the early part of their career, that, a lot of people like to compare them to Floyd Mayweather Jr., just to figure out later that they're pretty much a lesser clone, or what they think Floyd Mayweather Jr. brought to the game of that of boxing. Devin Haney, in my view, he tries to fight a lot like Floyd Mayweather Jr. He is not Floyd Mayweather Jr. Nowhere near. It just is what it is. And Devin Haney, I think, is a very decent fighter. I think that he's a relatively great fighter. But at the end of the day, that Ryan Garcia performance pretty much proved everything that I needed to see in terms of him ever being compared to that of Floyd Mayweather Jr. And he's a relatively skilled fighter. He is. But in terms of his skill set, is he, a little bit overrated? Yeah, probably. But that being said, I've never really agreed with the narrative of him being chinny, but I thought that I would talk about this because, of course, Boxing Ego has been a major Gervonta Tank Davis fan, and especially ever since Devin Haney ended up losing to that of Ryan Garcia, which, of course, was perfect PR for that of Gervonta Tank Davis and his fan base. Boxing Ego, of course, has been going in. Someone that allegedly is so objective and logical and all this other stuff. The reason why he's going so hard after Devin Haney once again is because Devin Haney was looked at as a guy that was supposed to fight Gervonta Tank Davis eventually, and there was question marks about why Gervonta Tank Davis was never trying to attempt to fight that of Devin Haney. And Boxing Ego would go in on other fighters, such as Terrence Bud Crawford for not signing with the PBC, or Canelo Alvarez not fighting that of David Benavidez, which are, relative points. They are valid points. But at the same time, why then would you not criticize Gervonta Tank Davis for not trying to make fights with Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney or any of the elite black fighters around his weight classes, or Teofimo Lopez or Vasily Lomachenko or any of those guys, or Josh Taylor or Regis Prograis or Jose Ramirez or any of those guys? Say whatever you want to about Devin Haney, even after this recent loss that I believe has been overturned, but Devin Haney has at least fought Lomachenko, George Kambosos, Ryan Garcia, and I believe Regis Prograis as well. Whether people want to admit it or not, he does have a better resume than that of Gervonta Tank Davis. It is what it is. Now, that being said, do I believe that he's probably any longer on the top 10 pound per pound list? Probably not, because I still, in my view, count that as a loss that he took to Ryan Garcia. I do think that it should have been overturned because of the standards that, of course, are upheld in boxing. Ryan Garcia, because he was caught on something that was banned, should be banned and it should be overturned. But for any of us that know shit about the snack program, we know that Devin Haney is on PEDs anyway. So it is what it is. But anyways, let's get into this video. Let's see what Mr. Boxing Ego has to say.
We unpack. Oh my God, I'm back with some more bad news. The Haneyaks don't want to hear it. Jorge Lanata's former Devin Haney opponent, he speaks out and he said some interesting things, we'll say. To me, he was dropping gems. I think Jorge Lanata's dropping some gems, but we gonna talk about it. In a brand new interview with YSM Sports Media, Jorge Lanata said some very interesting things. I'm gonna paraphrase for you guys so you guys get the picture. So Jorge Lanata was talking about the Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney situation. And it's funny because he only spent, he was being fair, but he only spent a few moments on Ryan Garcia's part. He said that was bad on Ryan Garcia's part, unprofessional for him to miss the weight, and then he has a positive pop for the Osterring. Then he immediately, the rest of the interview that was uploaded was about Devin Haney. And to paraphrase what Jorge Lanata said, he said that Devin Haney needs to come back down to 135 pounds. He needs to drop down in weight because, like Boxing Ego has been saying, he is in between a rock and a hard place at 140 or beyond. He says because Devin Haney doesn't have any punching power and he doesn't have a chin. He doesn't have a good chin. Whereas he said Ryan...
Well, first of all, let me talk about that very quickly. Excuse me. Because that is a lot to talk about for that short little amount of time. First of all, when you talk about Devin Haney potentially going back down to 135, in my view, that is pretty much out of the question. Devin Haney he's in his mid-20s, I believe, maybe even early 20s. Devin Haney is not a kid that, in my view, is going to be able to go back to that of 135 pounds. He is not really a natural 135 pounder. He rehydrates at around 160 plus. At the end of the day, the man is around the same size as that of a Terrence Bud Crawford. He might be a little bit lighter in the ass right now because, of course, he has to fight that at 140 pounds or at the junior welterweight division. But Devin Haney is not a small guy. When you talk about Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez, both of those fighters are really at the minimum natural 140 level pounders. Right? That's what those guys are. Now, in terms of talking about the punching power of Devin Haney, it looked like it increased a little bit, at least for that, of the Regis Prograis fight. He knocked him down, I believe, multiple times. Probably even potentially could have stopped him had he stepped on the gas a little bit more, And of course, also against that of Ryan Garcia, he did hurt him, I believe, once or twice. Stumbled him, I believe, in the second round of that fight. But it is what it is. I think that Devin Haney, that his power increased a little bit, but Devin Haney does not have extraordinary punching power. And what's also more important is that Devin Haney does not have extraordinary defense. He is not an extraordinarily gifted fighter in terms of defensive prowess. He's just not. It is what it is.
Definitely has power.
But in terms of the chin, once again, do I agree with that? No, I do not. I don't think that him getting wobbled by Jorge Linares, who was also at one point in time one of the more elite champions at 135 pounds before Lomachenko got to him, and also a guy that was known for his great speed and punching power. And Devin Haney, of course, got wobbled very badly by him with a flush punch. I'm not really going to consider that chinny. And the fact that he got knocked down 3 times by Ryan Garcia, who's one of the hardest hitters around his weight classes. Keep in mind, Gervonta Tank Davis, that is the only puncher that Gervonta Tank Davis has ever, truly actually feared, at least consistently, against that of Ryan Garcia. And you know how you could tell that he could respect his power without Gervonta Tank Davis even saying it? Because every time Ryan Garcia would push him back or hit him in the clinch, Gervonta Tank Davis would be bitching to the referee. That's how you know that power was for real. So Ryan Garcia, I don't think a lot of people truly know how hard that dude actually punches. Gervonta Tank Davis, after he got in the ring with him and after the fight, he said that dude punches hard as hell. So once again, Ryan Garcia is no light puncher. He may even be a harder puncher than Teofimo Lopez.
And he has a better chin. So
actually, Ryan Garcia, to be quite honest with you, there's a potential that he may even be a harder hitter than Gervonta Tank Davis. But Gervonta still might be a harder hitter because I'm not quite sure. He did knock out Frank Martin with one good shot.
That's that. But for Devin Haney, that's a bad cocktail or a bad combination of things to have/lack in terms of being at that weight. Now,
the thing is with Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez is that those two fighters, they're never going to look quite the same as what they did at 135. And that's why, whenever I bring up the debate about Canelo Alvarez and Oscar De La Hoya, for example, I always have all these guys that sit here and tell me that how can you have Canelo Alvarez above Oscar De La Hoya? Oscar De La Hoya was able to beat two debatable top 10 to top 15 fighters of all time, or top 20 fighters of all time at a minimum, in Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker and Chavez Sr., Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. How can you have De La Hoya above Canelo Alvarez? I'll tell you, or excuse me, how can you have Canelo above Oscar De La Hoya? I'll tell you why. Because to me, it doesn't really impress me that much when the biggest wins of your career are against guys that probably should be naturally two weight classes lower than you. There's no offense against Oscar De La Hoya, but the man is about 5'11" to 6 foot tall, and he was fighting two guys that were around 5'7" with I don't even know how much of an arm reach. At the end of the day, Oscar De La Hoya was the younger man in both of those fights. He also was the more favorable in terms of the boxing promotion, and on top of that, he was a decent amount bigger. He was supposed to win those fights. So that's why I said we would eventually see how good Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez actually are at the 140-pound weight class. Because I'm sorry, but just because you have a win over the former number one pound-for-pound fighter in Lomachenko, who's at the max, a 130-pounder when it comes down to it, to me, that doesn't really impress me much when you could be fighting at the junior welterweight or the welterweight division and you're not able to beat any of your adversaries at that weight class. It just doesn't impress me. So like I said, let's see how good these fighters are actually. When you talk about fighters that have actually been able to beat adversaries that have been similar in size or bigger in size, you're talking about fighters like Inoue. You're talking about fighters like Crawford. You're talking about fighters like Canelo, Usyk, certain guys like that. You're talking about guys like that. Even Fury to a degree, at least with Wilder and Klitschko, somewhat. You're talking about fighters like that. I need to see, Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez do that a little bit more consistently. Now, that being said, Teofimo Lopez did defeat Josh Taylor, and he also did defeat a couple of other guys. Devin Haney did defeat Regis Prograis. However, against Ryan Garcia, who is probably, the most talented fighter that he ever fought that was so similar in size, he lost, and he lost pretty badly in the second half of the fight. So once again, Devin Haney is going to have to tune up on some things.
Other brilliant thing that Jorge Linares said, that your boy Ego Stradamus has been telling you, this new breed of fighter, this new generation, and I'm really talking about anybody under the age of 29 years old, right about that cusp, is what Linares was saying is pretty much what I've been saying, is basically these new fighters are lazy. They don't maintain their weight. A lot of people want the look, they want the money, they want the accolades. And boxing has evolved in some ways good, but also in some ways bad. And I'll explain that in the next 30 seconds. The ways that it's involved is financially.
Anyone with $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal loans may qualify for help from National Debt Relief.
The ways that it's involved is financially, you're risking your life and you can make more money for that risk. So for a boxer, there's no better time in history to be a pugilist and be a boxer, because you got Turkey Al Sheikh and he breaking bread, you got PBC and these different companies, and you're able to earn way more money than what was previously possible. You look at GOATs like Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson, there were periods of time where Sugar Ray Robinson would fight multiple times in a month. Or
speaking of quote-unquote GOATs, when you talk about greatest fighters of all time, because a lot of people, of course, they like to misuse that term. But let me tell you this. When you're talking about fighters of this generation that could be talked about within the conversation of some of the greatest fighters of all time, when you talk about Terrence Bud Crawford, he is going to have to debatably be within that conversation, at least within the top 30 to top 40 boxers of all time. Now, of course, a lot of people would say, well, I even have him higher. I think that he's right there around, maybe the top 10 and top 20 level. That's your business. I just don't know quite for sure if Terrence Bud Crawford, excuse me, if he really has quite enough of an advanced resume or enough of a resume in terms of the variety of opponents to really be quite for sure within my top 20. Definitely not within my top 10. But I mean, he definitely has the skill set and the dominance to be up there with anybody. Usyk now also has to be up there, at least debatably up there with any of the cruiserweights of all time. He now has to be remembered as the greatest cruiserweight of all time. He was able to do something that not even Evander Holyfield was able to do, which is beat the best heavyweight of his era when he was clearly outsized. That is something that Holyfield was not able to do. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, well, Lennox Lewis was much more skilled than Fury. Fury is a very decently skilled heavyweight, but he does have flaws, and Usyk, of course, was able to expose some of those flaws. So it was good on Alexander Usyk that he was able to win that matchup. All right, it is what it is. And Lennox Lewis, keep in mind, he was not completely flawless either. Lennox Lewis was a guy that was knocked out 2 times, out cold in his career by basically contenders, not even champions. All right, so it is what it is. But anyways, when it comes down to the overall, like I said, so you have those fighters in a way. Of course, we'll see where he goes from here. You know, Usyk, Crawford, and of course, Canelo Alvarez. Those guys have to be remembered as some of the greatest fighters of all time, period.
Have a fight and then threaten to pull out because he didn't like the pay, and then he would hold up the event, things like that. Or he would fight, and then 2 weeks later, a week later, some of these guys from yesteryear would have another fight. There's nobody fighting that's top level, that's making multi-millions, that's fighting with that level of frequency. So to me, that era is dead. You got to appreciate the pioneers of the game and the people before. Like, you're not going to see fighters with Julio Cesar Chavez and Ray Robinson type of records, right? Or even Pacquiao, where they have all these types of fights and they got like 75 plus fights under their belt. The closest it would be like maybe a Canelo, somebody who came up in the Mexico boxing circuit and they started at 14, 15 years old.
Yes, and someone that also somewhat grew up around the time at the end of the Mayweather and Pacquiao era. Canelo Alvarez might be the last opponent that we see within that amount of fights. I don't know if we're ever really going to see that again, at least as consistently. That's why whenever we compare fighters to fighters like Canelo or Mayweather or Pacquiao, we have to be very careful when doing that, because those are guys that not only have a significant amount of fights, but you're talking about elite level champions when they held the belt, or when they were undefeated, or when they were at a very good point in their career. Like I said, people can say whatever they want to about any of those fighters, but Canelo Alvarez has fought a lot of A-grade level fighters when they were either champions or when they were looked at as undefeated or at a very great point in time in their career. Canelo Alvarez, fought Cotto, fought Kovalev, fought Saunders, Smith, Plant, fought Danny Jacobs, fought Trout, fought Lara, fought Golovkin, fought Jaime Munguia, fought Jamel Charlo, and I'm sure that there's other names that I'm not mentioning at the moment. All right, when you talk about Pacquiao, he fought Barrera, he fought Morales, he fought Marquez. All right, he fought that, I believe, I'm trying to think of some of the other names. He beat Ricky Hatton, he beat Miguel Cotto, he beat Keith Thurman, he beat Timothy Bradley. He beat that of some of the other guys out there that maybe I'm not mentioning. Mayweather beat Cotto. He beat Hatton. He beat that of Pacquiao. He beat Marquez. He beat De La Hoya. He beat a lot of those guys. Maybe Jose Luis Castillo, whoever else you want to mention. So when you talk about those guys not only are the creme de la creme of their generation, in my view, but they have such an extensive resume that when we compare certain fighters to those guys, we have to be very careful, being a little bit too quick to compare those, certain fighters to those fighters, because those fighters not only were astronomically skilled, but they have a great resume as well, an all-time great resume.
Or whatever, and they fought a lot of cab drivers and journeymen on the way up and have a crazy padded record, like Gilberto Ramirez or, Canelo.
Or Deontay Wilder.
Before he came to America, things like that, but long gone.
But you notice that Deontay Wilder is never in these conversations. Boxing Ego will never mention Deontay Wilder as a quote-unquote padded record. Deontay Wilder has one of the most padded records that I've personally ever seen out of any professional fighter. Go ahead and literally take a look at his first 30-some fights in his resume. They were literally against complete cab drivers.
On are the days where you see fighters that are probably going to get to 80-plus fights, 85-plus fights in their career because you can make so much money. So for some reasons, it is a good thing because boxing, you are risking your life by lacing them up. It's a dangerous sport. It could have long-lasting effects, CTE, and, speech problems and speech impediments and health issues after the fact. So for that reason, you're able to make more money than was previously the case. But with the good comes the bad. And the bad is, with that ability, these young fighters, a lot of them are almost like brats, like they're entitled. And just what Lenatus is saying, they don't want to put the work in and they don't want to make the sacrifice, which is specifically why, if you look at it, this new generation, I'm talking about mostly fighters under the 30-year-old mark, right? If you look at these new fighters, that's why you see guys who move to a division and then they move to another division, like another higher division, a very short period after, which is weird because back in the day you had guys who would stay in divisions, and of course you had Roberto Duran's and things like that.
Well, another part of the reason why people are also doing that is because the standards are also completely different for today as well. Once again, a lot of people, when also we talk about greatness, a lot of people are also going to talk about the unifications. So when you talk about the unifications of titles, a lot of people are going to take a look back at it and say, you know what, is Canelo Alvarez clearly the greatest Mexican fighter of all time? Not only does he have all these great wins, but on top of that, he was able to unify that of the 168-pound weight class. None of the other Mexican fighters did that, at least overall, from what I know. So, is it possible that he's the greatest? Terrence Crawford was able to unify 2 separate weight classes, at least at the current moment in time. Is he greater than Floyd Mayweather Jr.? Inoue was able to do it. Is he greater than Pacquiao? So a lot of people are going to be asking that, but people also must realize that unifications, even though, of course, it was always a standard, kind of like how the triple-double was in the NBA 20 years ago, it wasn't something that was as common as what it is today. It's kind of like the UFC. When you take a look at the UFC today, because Conor McGregor, because he eventually sought out to get, to become a double champion, now pretty much a lot of people are doing it. I'm not going to say everybody, but a lot of people, of course, are now starting to try and do it, So once again, you are very influenced by that of your generation. You have to keep that in mind.
That would eventually move up in their career for better opportunities. But there's a lot of guys that they're rapidly moving through different divisions because they're not able to make the weight.
If you're a man who makes at least 150 grand a year and you're still embarrassed to take your shirt off at the pool,
able to make the weight and hold the weight for any period of time. So you don't even really see much. Like let's say Shakur Stevenson, right? He was way too big. He pretty much should have never been at featherweight. The way his body was growing and whatever, you start seeing he had stretch marks on his arms and things like that. Featherweight was just, he wasn't going to make that for a long period of time. Then he moved to 130 and he didn't really do too much damage there. Like he had a couple fights, Oscar Valdez, things like that, and Jamel Herring, but now he's already up at lightweight. These guys are too big. I don't know if it's a passion thing, if it's a training thing. Same thing with Devin Haney. Devin Haney had his second fight at 140 pounds with Ryan Garcia. Now, credit to him, he made the weight. He made the contracted weight, but it's still alarming, which is something that Boxing Ego, the best in the business, and it's not even close, has always said. It's alarming that Devin Haney's in his second fight in a brand new division and he has to weigh in naked. Like, why do you have to weigh in naked to achieve a weight to a class you just got to, And the red flags have been there. Even his first fight, he's rehydrating 25 pounds overnight. That's excessive. Devin Haney.
That definitely does seem a little bit excessive, and I understand Boxing Ego's point, and this is also going to bring us to the conversation about Devin Haney being a quote-unquote weight bully. And, listen, at 135 maybe, but at 140, he's around the same size as those guys. But this has always kind of happened in boxing where people that, they end up being a quote-unquote weight bully. Devin Haney is a dude that once again could easily be fighting at the 147-pound weight class. But the question once again is going to be, how is he going to fare, at that of the 147-pound weight class if he ever gets there? Because what I will state is this, even though the power thing and the quote-unquote chin thing, even though I don't think they're quite as relevant right now as what Linares is mentioning. I mean, the power is a little bit more relevant in my view. The chin really isn't. But when you don't have elite level power like that of a Devin Haney, and you overall don't have elite level defense, and you might have to fix some things, it's going to be a completely different story once you start moving up weight classes to where these guys are used to bigger guys and they're around your own same size for real. And that's what we've seen in the Ryan Garcia fight.
He weighed in his fight with Regis Prograis at 140, coming from lightweight 135. He weighed the same amount as Canelo versus Floyd Mayweather the day of the fight. And Canelo was a 54-pound guy fighting Floyd at 152 catchweight. You know, he weighed within a pound of Erislandy Lara, his weight, when Erislandy Lara fought against Canelo. So why is a 140-pounder...
Great fight, by the way. Very challenging fight for Canelo Alvarez. For those of you that never watched the Lara versus Canelo Alvarez fight that could have went either way. That's why a lot of people believe that Canelo Alvarez could have lost that fight. He very well could have. But that was a fight that could have went either way. That was a fantastic fight. Lara was actually one of my favorite fighters to watch throughout that time. But unfortunately, at times, he just would not be offensive enough or bite the bit enough, in my view, to really win, at least decisively, some of those bigger fights.
A new 140-pounder matching the weights of young 154-pounders at the time, Canelo and Lara. So it shows me something there. So I agree wholeheartedly with Jorge Linares, and I've been saying this even before he put out this interview. It's ridiculous. But back to Devin Haney, he's in between a rock and a hard place. Many people feel his chin is limited. You know, he has a suspect chin, whatever you want to call it, glass chin. A lot of people feel that way. Plus...
Well, in my view, once again, I have to disagree with those people. I don't think a lot of people really realize how hard Ryan Garcia punches. Ryan Garcia punches astronomically hard. Like I said, Gervonta Tank Davis is one of the hardest punchers on the planet, even for his size. I guarantee you that Gervonta Tank Davis has the same level of punching power as some 147 or 154 pounders out there. And Ryan Garcia was having Gervonta Tank Davis back on the back foot in some of those rounds in that fight because he could feel the level of punching power that Ryan Garcia had. Ryan Garcia just has astronomical punching power. Like, it's not even comparable. Ryan Garcia probably has some punching power, overall of some middleweights, to be quite honest with you. Ryan Garcia has excellent power.
You fought Ryan Garcia, who was tagging you and getting off at will. So in terms of like PTSD and all the angst and repressed memories that come with being abused in that fight by Ryan Garcia, we know these...
He said by being abused. As if Ryan Garcia bent over Devin Haney and just spanked him in the middle of the ring.
Wars take and put more mileage on the fighter. So to come, his chin was already in question, but on top of that, you got in a fight where you were battered, so to speak. And that's why I never, if you watch all of my videos since I started, you've never heard me be really a proponent and an advocate for, oh, he's showing a lot of heart. Like, I say it.
Well, you do that with your favorite fighters, like Errol Spence Jr. or Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder. But Devin Haney, sure, he might be a black fighter, but he's not with the PBC. And on top of that, he's against your golden token right now. He's against your golden boy, Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. So you have to be against any of those fighters. That's why Boxing Ego, as of recent, he's been so against that of Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Vasily Lomachenko, all those guys. Not really quite Vasily Lomachenko as much anymore because he's not really as much of a threat anymore. But especially Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez, any one of those guys. A little bit of Ryan Garcia before, of course, Ryan Garcia was able to help him out with beating that of Devin Haney. Is what it is.
Maybe occasionally, but I don't overuse the whole he got heart angle. Because to me, it's stupid. Heart to get you killed. Like, if guys are trying to rob a bank and they got ARs and you got heart and then you rush one of the guys, okay, you got heart, you see they're armed robbers and you rush them, but that heart is also stupidity because while you're sitting up here rushing and trying to thwart bank robbers, they're strapped and fully loaded and then they light you up. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't believe in heart. Heart is not, like, people confuse heart with stupidity. And
I do agree with that. I believe in heart. Of course, you have to have a great amount of heart. I've seen fighters, of course, that don't have a great amount of heart. And, of course, if you don't have a great amount of heart or willingness to really, really give it your all in a fight, even if that means possibly getting knocked out, then you're not going to win some of your biggest fights out there, at least potentially. Heart, of course, obviously is a part of the equation. It's very important, but the problem is that it can't be all of it. There are certain fighters out there that pretty much just win their fights off a complete heart and really not much else. Like for those of you that remember John Molina Jr., the man that, looked like a poor impression of Elvis Presley. The man overall, once again, he would get in the ring against fighters like Lucas Matisse and Terrence Bud Crawford and Adrian Broner, and he would fight completely off of heart. He didn't really have great feet. He didn't have great, footwork. He really didn't have that of great of great punching prowess. But what he had was decent power, and on top of that, he had a great amount of heart. But he just really didn't have much else. He had a good chin as well, from what I remember. But John Molina just was not a guy that, ever was going to be an elite level fighter. So heart, of course, is going to be a part of it. If you're an elite level fighter, and if you don't have heart, when you're finally in that ring against that guy, that is going to be willing to prove it all on the line, even if he has to potentially get stopped, you're not going to win that fight potentially. But at the end of the day, it can't be all heart. There are certain fighters that have basically nothing but heart.
I know that probably sounds harsh, but people misconstrue like heart and courage with things that are stupid. If you run around in flip-flops across a 4-lane interstate or highway, right? That doesn't make you courageous to me. That doesn't make you noble. That makes you an idiot to me.
I would agree.
Right? Yeah, okay, this guy is filming a video and he's darting through traffic on the freeway and there's semis and trucks swerving and things like that. That's not courageous to me. Like, especially if you're just doing it for TikTok or something. You're not doing it for, like, to save somebody or some actual reason. You're just doing it for clout and viewership. That's stupid. You're risking your life for nothing. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of times people confuse that. They confuse like courage and nobility versus like even in boxing. Sometimes a fighter showing heart, but it's dumb for their corner not to stop the fight, if that makes sense. Because this beating is going to stay with your fighter, and by you showing pride and not being willing to throw in the towel.
Yes, absolutely. As with everything, there has to be that of a balance. Absolutely, I agree with Mr. Boxing Ego. But anyways, I thought that I would just kind of talk about that because, I'm going to review a little bit more of this. I'm not sure quite how much longer because I wanted to talk a little bit more about Devin Haney, but we'll see. But, we're going to see where Devin Haney goes from here. Because the question is going to be about Devin Haney is he done as a fighter or how is he going to recover from this?
You're only making it worse long term for your fighter. So the punishment I've seen Devin Haney take, even if you thought he had a good chin, which I don't know anyone that really has said that, but if you thought he had a great granite chin, the amount of punishment that he took from Ryan could have definitely influenced that, because that's what happens. We've seen guys like Meldrick Taylor, and he was winning the fight for real, with Julio Cesar Chavez.
That's a great comparison for Devin Haney in my view, which is Meldrick Taylor. At least from the fights that I watched of him. Very talented, very fast, decent athlete, but not a guy that in my view that I would say was one of the most skilled Black American fighters that I've ever seen. I mean, he was decently skilled. Don't get it twisted. He was a very skilled fighter. But, to say that he would have been on the same level as Sweet Pea Whitaker or, Floyd Mayweather Jr. or anything like that, no.
But we see the outcome of the fight, and I don't think Meldrick Taylor was ever the same. So without a shred of doubt, a shadow of doubt in my mind, Ego has led you guys yet again to the promised land. Notice the stuff, the speech, the gospel that I give you on my channel. You have other people who are actual boxers and trainers and stuff, and they're basically confirming and corroborating what I've said, and they're attesting.
Are you looking for a green card? Well, imagine yourself waking up every day knowing you're not.
Basically confirming and corroborating what I've said, and they're attesting to what I've said. Linares is telling you, in his own words, what Ego has been telling you, right? Devin is in between a rock and a hard place, and I think that's why he's talking about lawsuits and this, that, and the third, because deep down inside, whether he admits it or not, he probably realizes it. But even more so is he lacks power, and people believe he lacks a chin. So if you have discipline.
Well, the question is, once again, is does he lack those things? There's no offense against most people, but most people are idiots. They really don't know what the hell they're talking about. In my view, Devin Haney, and I could be wrong, but Devin Haney does not really have that bad of a chin. His power improved a little bit for the full 140-pound weight class, but it's not astronomical power. The question is, how is he going to do going up further up the weight classes, and how badly does this Ryan Garcia loss really affect him? And so far, of course, it seems that it has affected him somewhat badly. So we'll see what happens.
Issues, and now you need to move up to 147. If you're getting like bulldozed by a undisciplined, non-committed Ryan Garcia, 147 is going to be a huge challenge. And there's this.
I would agree, especially if you fight certain fighters like Jaron Boots Ennis or some other guys. I would agree. And that's why I've always said about Devin Haney that I don't really know how well he's going to do once he reaches the upper weight classes. I've always said that about him. But not because of a quote-unquote lack of chin or not because of a lack of heart or anything like that. And even his power has seemed to get a little bit better, but he does not have elite level punching power. And on top of that, he's not quite as skilled as what a lot of people try to allege that he was. He is a decently skilled fighter. Is he a Mayweather? No, he's not. Is he a Crawford or a Canelo or an Inoue or a Usyk? No, he's not any of those guys. He's a decently great fighter, but he's about a tier or two below those guys. It just is what it is. It's whatever. But anyways, like I said, we'll see what Ego kind of wraps up with here, and then I might end this video.
Other misnomer in boxing, where some people, they'll say that, a fighter moving up in weight, they're going to be stronger because they're moving up in weight and they're giving their body a break. Now, there could.
Well, some fighters, once again, they do show that their power does improve as they go up the weight classes. Miguel Cotto, for example, when he was moving up the weight classes, his power always kind of translated. Terrence Bud Crawford, his power always kind of translated, if not even got a little bit better. Now, once again, he's also with the snack program, so take that with a grain of salt. But, it is what it is. But Devin Haney, of course, he's also with the snack program, and his power, it got a little bit better, but I wouldn't say astronomically better. And Shakur Stevenson, of course, he's also with the snack program, and it doesn't look like his power has been influenced at all. And Shakur Stevenson, he has all the boxing ability, in my view, in the world to potentially beat some of his adversaries within his weight classes. But the problem is that he just doesn't really appear to have any punching power whatsoever, or at least any elite punching power. At best, I would probably give it a B. And you're going to need more than that, in my view, at least usually, in terms to winning of the big fights.
Be some validity to that. In some instances, that is true. But usually, it is not true when the fighter at the lighter weight classes lacks power, and then they're not really hurting guys in much lighter divisions, and then they move up and move up and move up. Then usually your strength is not going to improve. There are
not usually, that is correct.
Some times where if a fighter was absolutely killing himself to make the weight on the scale to hit that number, and they were depleting everything and leaving it all in the gym and barely making, then there are select times, I guess you could say, where a fighter would have improved power and be a bit sharper and better because they're not crashing out their body. But the reality is we've seen much of Devin's career. He's been a fighter that showed promise since before he was a pro. So basically the amateurs. And at the end of the day, we've seen enough of Devin Haney's fights. He's not really knocking out. His best knockout is probably Antonio Moran, which is not something you write home about. It's not like a legendary foe that he knocked out, right? So at the end of the day, we've seen him at 35 and now 40. And how many knockdowns does he have? Regis Prograis, he knocked him down. Never knocked Ryan down. Didn't knock Lomachenko down. So at the elite level, it's going to be hard because like Lenatus is saying, these guys at 140 pounds, they're more durable, bigger, and stronger. He even said in this interview, he said, I started, I was at featherweight and then I gradually moved up over the years because my body would not permit me to make some of the lower weight classes anymore. And then he said he pushed it, basically saying he pushed it too far, and he went to 140, and he said that was my mistake. So he's basically...
Yes, and that was the fight where Jorge Linares, I believe, got knocked out in the first round. Jorge Linares was never the same fighter after he got knocked out by Lomachenko. He was never the same. And then you had certain guys, excuse me, like Dante's Boxing Nation, trying to basically say this shit about how impressive it was to beat Jorge Linares, who was this former champion, who was never the same after he got knocked out by Lomachenko, and never a champion ever again. And then when it comes to other fighters that he needs to tear down, like Canelo when he fought Kovalev or Cotto, apparently those guys are way too old, even though they were champions when he fought him. It just goes to show you once again how much of a snake that Dante's Boxing Nation actually is, and once again how disingenuous a lot of these channels can be. But that pretty much is going to be about it for this video. I just wanted to talk about that, but we'll see where Mr. Devin Haney goes. It should be very particularly interesting, and I'll talk to y'all later.